First, save your reference image. By selecting the image, it will expand, and by scrolling down, you can see Download Image. Select Download, and this will automatically go to your Downloads folder. Navigate to your files, and make sure you choose iCloud Drive and your Downloads folder, and then locate your file. Select the Share button, and select Save Image. Then go to your photos, open your photo, and the first thing you're going to do is duplicate this image. So you should see 2 copies. I've already done this, so I actually have 4. Then you're going to take your duplicate and edit it to make it black and white. So I'm going to scroll down to saturation and completely desaturate my image. I'm going to slightly increase my black point, then also just add a tiny bit of contrast just to give myself the best tonal range. This is basically a full value range within my image. Now I can open up Illustrator, and I'm going to create a new document. I'm going to title my document, and I'm going to change my units to inches, and I'm going to make it a 9 by 12 document. Make sure the orientation matches your image. So if it's horizontal, make sure you choose horizontal, or vertical, make it vertical. Now I can select Import. It's the small image icon on the bottom left, and choose Image. I'm first going to import my color image. I'm going to open up the layers, and I'm going to first lock this layer. Then I'm going to hide it, and I'm going to create a new layer, and this is where I'm going to import the black and white image right on top of the color. I don't have to scale it because it's scaling in automatically to fit as large as possible. I want to keep these the same size so I can go back and forth between color and black and white. So I'm going to lock layer 2, which is the black and white image, and add another layer. I'm going to title this Value Scale by swiping right to left on my actual layer and just typing in the name. Now I'm going to grab the rectangle tool, and I'm going to start with black, fill, and no outline. And if you select the CMKY sliders, you can actually choose grayscale. And now I'm going to hold the shortcut option, that's the little circle on your screen, and drag out to roughly about a 1-inch square. Then I'm going to duplicate it by just dragging the little pop-up plus sign in the context menu and make 5 different squares. Then with the selection arrow, I'm going to select my box, and I'm going to change my value of each box. So that way I have 100%, a 75%, this one's going to be 50, the next one's going to be 25, and the top one will be 10%. I don't need a white one because that'll just be the white of the page. So now I have a simplified value scale, and I'm going to lock that layer and create a new layer group. This one I'm going to call Samples. Now I'm going to grab the circle tool, I'm going to change the fill, and I have to go back to the CMKY sliders, and now I'm going to expand my color wheel. Inside the color wheel, you can see this eyedropper tool at the top right. This will allow me to sample different colors or values of your image exactly. So I'm going to first just draw a red line. So notice how I'm switching the fill to no fill and the red outline or stroke to red. I'm just using the swatches to get a red. And I'm just going to point my value sample to where I'm actually locating it. And I'm going to just use the selection tool, that's the arrow, to just double click in the side and then grab my circle tool and change the fill using the eyedropper and drag that plus sign to right at the end of the red line. And you can see now the filled circle is exactly the value where I just sampled from. I'm just going to move that at the end of my line. And we're going to do this quite a bit. Once you have the sample, it is up to you to identify what value this actually is. So I'm just going to use the paintbrush tool, and this is my darkest value. So I'm going to number these. I haven't done that yet, but this is basically my darkest value, so it's going to be 5. My lightest will be 1. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my brush tool and label those. I'm going to speed this process up a little bit more quickly. So I'm just going to grab my pen tool and place my lines a while. So I'm going to select the point I'm referencing, select where I want to add the swatch label, and then I actually have to go to the selection tool, double click in the space, and then go back to the pen tool between each line I draw, or else you're going to add a continuous shape. So the goal here is to give yourself plenty of references. So looking at this image, I'm looking at the cast shadow, and there's about two main values here. There's the dark area, and then there's that lighter transition. Looking at the cherry itself, there's the core values, there's the reflected light, there's the midtones or the halftones, there's the reflected light, and then there's those light values in the stem and at the top of the cherry. So I'm going to add at least a reference for each of those. Then I'm going to grab the selection tool, select the circle, and now I'm just going to duplicate it and drag a duplicate to the ends of each of these lines. Again, this is a little faster than trying to draw an individual circle every time at an inch. So they're not the correct values yet, but I'm just selecting the circle. That little plus symbol you see in that little pop-up menu, I'm going to just select it and drag, and it's going to create a duplicate. And then you can reposition it. If it's not quite perfect when you reposition it, just drag that little move arrow next to the lock button, and you can position it wherever you'd like. With the selection arrow, now select the circle, and we're going to change the value of each of these circles to match the image. So open the swatch panel. The top right of the color wheel, you can see an eyedropper tool. Select it, and then as that plus sign pops up on your screen, drag that to where you want to reference or to sample your color or value. So now you can see I got a little too close to my red line and it got a little pinkish, so I'm going to resample this. Opening the swatch panel, grabbing that eyedropper tool, and then dragging real close, look at that little magnifying glass and get as close as possible, and there's my value reference. So to do this again, select the circle, select the magnifying glass on our swatch, and drag that magnifying glass till it samples that value you need. Do this for all of your circles. And if you can't see it because it's over the swatch panel, just look at the magnifying glass reference and kind of follow your red line. It'll still sample correctly. It's just unfortunate that the swatch panel opens up on the iPad. It's not ideal, but you can make it work because it's actually still sampling the image underneath. So you can see I just followed the red line until I got to my reference image and then sampled the value. So I meant to do this earlier, but I'm going to label my swatches or my value scale, starting with 5 as the darkest value and 1 as my lightest value. So I'm just grabbing my brush tool and I'm changing the stroke to red, and I'm just titling them 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now what I'm going to do is come across and match my swatch value to the sample that I selected as the circle. So basically look at your circles and get them as close to your square value scale as possible. Some of these are not going to be exact because we simplified this infinite value scale from life to only 5 values. This is a great method in drawing because simplification and blocking in values is a great place to start. And so whenever you are stuck in between, let's say I'm looking at this value and it's between 1 and 2, err towards the lighter value. Make it a 1 instead. So I'm going to continue this process for the rest of my image. I'm actually going to move this value scale a little bit out of the way. I'm just going to select everything and move it to the top left. I have to unlock my layers to do so, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in the rest of my value samples. Big part of drawing is being able to identify value and then matching it. If you can't correctly identify the value you're referencing, you'll never be able to match it. So this exercise is a great way to train your eyes and also your mind to identify the proper values. Now I'm selecting the artboard tool and dragging out my artboard so it encompasses all of my swatches and color samplings. Then I'm going to hit share, and I'm going to export this as a PNG to my camera roll. Now I can go to my camera roll, make sure it's there, This is my completed product. This is what you're going to upload to the assignment.